Welcome to the Mind Vine podcast, where we challenge the stigma associated with mental illness through conversations about a variety of issues impacting mental health. Here we bring you news, views, and interviews that intrigue, educate, and celebrate recovery. Leading us on this journey are the hosts of the Mind Vine podcast, Darryl Mathers and Chris Bovie.
Welcome, everyone, to the Mind Vine podcast. My name is Darryl Mathers. I'm with my co-host, Chris Bovie, and this is our third and final special edition of the podcast for our 100th anniversary. We are celebrating a century of care. We have an audience with us today, so we haven't actually, the other podcasts we've done, we haven't applauded, but thank you all for being here. I think it really adds something to the event. This is a very exciting day, so thank you for making time. We've had a couple different guests today with different stories, and we have a very inspiring story with our guest here today, in Alie Walker. Alie, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So Alie is a country musician, but she's not necessarily one that you might think of when you think of country music and maybe some of the traditional artists associated with it. She has a brand of music that I think really plays well with what we do here at Ontario Shores, which we'll get into. But I was wondering, Alie, maybe you could just first tell us a little bit about you and growing up and how you got into music.
Well, first of all, I didn't know that a few years ago you had something called mindful music. And I call my music mindful music and conscious country, and I swear I came up with that. So thank you for not trademarking it.
I think we really missed an opportunity there.
Yeah. Sorry, what was the question? Good start here.
Just take us through your introduction to music.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm from Prince Edward Island, and I moved to Toronto when I was 19, which was 10 years ago, to have more opportunities in music. And I really didn't start singing until my senior year in high school, and which is actually kind of late. I was a late bloomer in the singing world, and I just auditioned for my high school musical. I ended up getting the lead role, and my parents were completely shocked because they never heard me sing a note in my life. And I just got the bug, and that summer I took lessons from the professor at the university there, and I said, make me good enough to get into the vocal program. So I spent a year at university as a vocal major, did not enjoy it. I learned lots, but it was classical music, and I really loved country music. And so I just packed up, moved to Toronto, and really had nowhere to live for about a week, lived on my friend's floor, and then she kicked me out, and I just kind of walked up and down Yonge Street until I found an apartment.
That's a country song right there, isn't it?
Oh, God. It was a bad time, but found a place, and ever since then, I've just been kind of paying my dues, as I should say, playing all the bars, singing anywhere I can, going to Nashville, writing songs, really just ticking all the boxes of development, because one of my songs that you'll hear here is about being a perfectionist, and I really wanted to make sure that my first impression was a good one. So I basically spent the last 10 years working on my craft because I was a late bloomer, and that as a musician and as just, a typical blonde country singer, you kind of have to find something that separates you from the pack. And I was always trying to be the next Taylor Swift or trying to be the next Carrie Underwood, and it really wasn't organic to me. And I went through different things in my journey, and one of them was not drinking anymore, and I was singing songs about like breakups, booze, and boys, and I'm happily married and I don't drink anymore, so I was like, well, there's nothing left to talk about. But I just started talking about what was actually going on in my life, and that was, my mental health journey and social media and how that plays a huge role with comparison and judging yourself and learning to love yourself and working through perfectionism or anxiety or depression. And I was just writing songs for myself and not really expecting to share it with the world. And then I did, and it ended up getting a good response because nobody really talks about mental health in music, and especially not in country music. So about a year ago, I started putting out one song every month. And then last month, I guess, I put my first album out, and it's under, I call it the Basement Sessions, what I've learned so far, because I lived in Hamilton, and I wrote and recorded everything in my basement. Exciting life. And it's called What I Learned So Far, because it's literally just what I've learned so far. And I call it Mindful Music and Conscious Country.
So we're happy that you're using mindful music, and we gladly gift that to you to
Okay,
use.
thank you.
We have a theme because when we first started here, we ran a speaker series called Let's Talk before Bell. So we got to trademark some of these things. We're a little late out of the gate.
What the heck?
Yeah, I know, it's our bad. But I'm just curious, when you made that decision to write about those personal things in mental health, was that a tough hill to climb? Were you a little nervous about, if I do this, is it really, are people going to listen? Are they going to judge me? Or is this sort of, from a career path, a bad road to go down?
Well, I kind of started really diving into my mental health because I had really, really bad acne for many years, and I was just on this long journey of like hating what I looked like when I looked in the mirror. And I think that self-confidence can play a huge part in really diminishing your mental health and your self-confidence. So I was just looking in the mirror, hating what I looked like every day, and it wasn't going away. So I had to go on the path of loving myself, no matter what I looked like. And I was sick of just kind of hiding. I was that typical Instagram girl, face-tuning the crap out of my face and really not portraying what I actually look like online. And I got sick of it, and I just posted a picture with like a full inflamed face, and I said, hey, I've been lying to you, this is what I actually look like. And I just expected everybody to unfollow me, because at that point I had the wrong followers because I was posting those fake pictures. And it was actually the complete opposite, because I got just a plethora of messages of people saying, oh my God, maybe I don't have acne, but I can relate to you because I have this scar that no one's ever seen, and I've only worn long sleeves, or, you know, I'm dealing with this and nobody knows about it, or you gave me the confidence to just go to the grocery store without makeup, which just seems small, but it's actually quite big if you've never done it. And that to me was like, yep, this is what I'm meant to do. I don't care that I might not write a hit song about, you know, being in my Daisy Dukes in a truck, because that's not me. And, you know, I can deal with not having commercial #1 success in that world until we start becoming more comfortable with talking about things like this, which I think we are, which is amazing. To me, if I'm impacting somebody, that means way more than any of that.
When you talk about your mental health journey, when we talked the other day, you just mentioned your childhood and some of the things that you struggled with, but didn't really understand until you were an adult. And I'm wondering if you can kind of elaborate on what you experienced growing up.
I think, well, I grew up in PEI, and maybe just in my family, we didn't really talk about mental health. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of people back in the day. And back in the old days, I dealt with really, really bad anxiety since I was very, very young, and to the point where I couldn't even go to my friend's house without getting sick. It was just, that was what my body did. When I got nervous and anxious, I just got sick. So my friends knew, if Allie's coming over, she's getting sick. And that led to, you know, first day of school, first day of basketball camp. I was just such an anxious person, but I had no idea what that meant. I thought that was just, there's no words for it back then. And that went into performance, and I have no idea why I chose this world of performing and being in front of people, because I dealt with really, really bad performance anxiety, social anxiety for a really long time, where you were just asking me about if I've ever performed in Oshawa, and I performed at the Chorale years ago. It was a KX96 like singing karaoke contest, and that's like the most vivid memory of like exactly what I would go through every day. Of Pete Walker was saying, and here's Alie Walker, and I was in the bathroom throwing up because I was just so nervous, anxious about, you know, people judging me, and especially it was a competition, and just caring about what people thought of me. And I think that plays a big role of, you're just always worried about what people think of you, what do you look like, what you're portraying. And I was like, okay, something needs to change, because I can't live this anxious life every day. And that was when I started diving into, you know, what am I telling myself? What's my self-talk? Is it negative? And I have a song called Love Yourself, and it came from having the acne and really diving into what am I thinking? What's my negative self-talk? Would I ever speak to somebody else the way that I speak to myself? Absolutely not. And then also being in this industry and trying to find yourself and having the pressure of, age and having a career by a certain age, it was just like all piling on to my mental health. And, I call my album The Basement Sessions, but it's like that was also my mindset. I was just in a basement and of my mind too, because it was just negative. And I had to somehow twist it into the positive, and I didn't want my music to be negative. I wanted to find a way of how did I get through these things and what I learned, and how did I spin it to a positive so that I can maybe help somebody else through the stories of each song into something positive.
I just think about how difficult it must have been when you're trying to make a career in music and you have an idea of what commercially sells, right? And we all have a picture of what a successful musician is commercially, and in country music there's a certain image. And you're making a decision to basically do the opposite of what you're seeing on YouTube or in the radio or all that stuff. You're consciously making a choice to go in a different direction. And how big of was that a struggle, whether it was with yourself to make that decision, or was it with the people around you? Were they supportive of you kind of taking that different direction?
I think the response from media or public actually has been really good, because thankfully we are so much more open talking about mental health. And even you said, there's a wait list for facilities because people are so much more open and willing to take care of their mental health. But because my family didn't really talk about any of these things growing up, I would send them a song that I wrote, and they're like, hey, what's going on? How are you feeling? And that was basically my cry for help of, this is how I'm feeling, and I don't know how to say it, so I'm going to write a song and then send it to you. So my family actually had to go on this journey with me, because I also stopped drinking 2 years ago, which I wrote 2.5 pages of why I should never drink again, and a lot of them were, mental health related. And when I posted my 1 year sober post, my family was ashamed and shocked, because they didn't know, because I wasn't comfortable talking to them about my mental health, and they didn't know kind of the state I was in. So for them, that was my biggest journey of people accepting what I'm doing and talking about was my parents and my family, because I wasn't comfortable talking to them about it. And so when they heard it from me through songs or through podcasts, they're like, hey, it'd be nice if you talk to us about this every now and then. But sometimes your family is the hardest people to talk to, right? So for me, I turn to my husband, I turn to podcasts. There's so many resources out there now, whether that's a therapist, whether that's a doctor, whether that's somebody that you're comfortable with. I was more comfortable with listening to a podcast where someone had gone through the same thing as me, where I can just listen and say, oh my God, somebody else has gone through this. And it made me more comfortable, because I realized that a lot of people can tell you the same story or the same way to get better, but it's that one person and the way they deliver it that really sinks in. And for me, if I could be that one person for somebody else because they learn or they heal through music, then I need to do that.
And you talk about that moment, sort of that catalyst when you put the real you out on social media, and you saw the response. Did that change how you, people you followed, things that you follow on social media, did that change how you saw other people and maybe change your habits?
Yeah, social media has a huge impact on teenagers and young people, and me in my 20s. I can't even imagine growing up with social media now and posting pictures at such a young age and getting comparison, or going to school and hearing someone talk about you. I got that through MSN and MySpace back then, but doing it now, it'd be so hard. And for me, even in my 20s, I started following all of these like swimsuit models and all of these people that I apparently wanted to look like and I thought were perfect, and they did nothing. They just woke up and looked like that because that's what people portray on Instagram. And people can say, oh, it's not real, but you still think it's real because that's all you're following and that's all you're looking at. And the second I was like, no, that's not the right, even if they're really nice people, it's the way I portrayed it. So I unfollowed everybody and then only followed like speakers or authors or musicians or people that were doing good work in the world. You can create your reality in that way of what you're consuming. So unfollow all the models.
It must be really tough, though, in your profession. You're trying,
Yeah.
you're trying to establish a brand, and
Yeah.
you're trying to further your career. And social media is a real key component to music these days.
Yeah, and I do care about, doing my hair or wearing makeup. So there is like that fine line of caring but not caring too much. And there is still for me like selling. And that's like a weird line because I don't want to sell, but it's also like I'd like to make money someday. You know what I mean? So it is weird because I still want to be very authentic, and to me, I've connected with my audience by just being myself, being vulnerable, talking about things that people are uncomfortable talking about, and to me, that's really just selling my story, and if you like me, let's be friends and let's listen to music. So.
And I think that's really important in your music too, is you're not preaching in your music, you're just telling a story, telling your story, and hopefully people will find something in there that they can take out of it. Maybe you could describe a little bit about the writing process that you go through when you're doing your music.
It's always what I'm going through at the time. So I have a song called Sunny Day, and it's probably like my most in-depth song of dealing with anxiety and depression and really just wishing that every day was sunny, but it's not. And some of the things that we do in order to kind of get us out there, and I kind of build my tool belt when I'm in those spaces of the low and the depression or anxiety, where I know can kind of pull me out of those things. So whether that's people like to work out, me not so much. I like doing, yoga, meditation. Some people do like having a glass of wine because it just kind of takes the edge off. So I think finding whatever works best for you, and I just kind of put that into a song. And then I have a song called Take Your Power Back, and that's about bullying, which was another whole journey of mine of, dealing with girls in school that just would not give me the time of day and, bullying. And just what I'm going through or what I've gone through, and it's literally what I've learned so far. So it's just my own journal entries just saying, hey, this is what I've gone through, maybe it could help you.
What you're doing now, maybe you can kind of describe like some of the events. Like you mentioned, the bar scene is not something you're interested in. It doesn't really fly with the type of music that you're performing. So what are some of the things, the opportunities you've had since you've kind of developed your own genre?
Yeah, like you mentioned, if I'm not potentially going to have that number one song on radio because they love those songs about trucks and drinking. The events I'm playing are completely different, but they mean so much. Like doing something like this, speaking to you, I would rather do than play at the Oshawa Corral, let me tell you. I mean, great place, but not for me. But that was a part of my journey. I spent the last 10 years just putting myself through the ringer of playing places like Oshawa Corral, playing lots of weddings, playing lots of corporate events, but oh my God, soul-sucking to the nines. And it's just the worst. So I've really only come out a year ago as a solo artist because I spent the last 10 years really just trying to figure out what I wanted to say and who I was as an artist. But now I'm playing, Girl Talk Day, which was an empowering event in Toronto for 1,200 girls, which is great, ages 12 to 18. Look that up if you have children. It's really awesome. I played California at a women's empowerment event. I'm going to play Kelowna next year at a charity called Third Space, which is, I think it's a mental health charity. And I'm just so happy that I'm in this space. Like, look at everyone, they're just so nice. Everyone has a good face on, no one's hammered, hopefully. Hopefully, maybe you are, that's okay. And we're just having a conversation, a listening audience is nice.
What are some of the messages in those events that you've, specifically to young people, that you try to deliver, aside from your music? Because I think you're doing you're starting to get into speaking a little bit and connecting with younger people. So what are some of the things that you're trying to relay to them?
For younger girls, it's really like what I talked about, the whole social media thing. And, I have a cousin that's going through exactly what I went through in school. And I think you can get wrapped up in the moments that you are in as a young person, but that's not where you're going to be forever. And for me, in grade 11, I had to just make that switch of, I only have 2 years left. I can, separate myself from the people that aren't good for my mental health, and I can get through this. And just that whatever moment you're in now isn't always going to be that moment. And I have a song that I've never put out called Pain is Temporary, and it's exactly that. It's never going to be forever, and you're going to be able to find ways out of it. And that's my kind of bit on younger girls, but I also talk a lot. I work with the Brain Tumor Foundation of Canada, and I have a song called Fight Till the End because I wrote it for my uncle, who's unfortunately, he just passed, but he was battling cancer for 5 years, and it's called Fight Till the End. And just the fact that I can kind of have songs that are in the space of empowering and mental health, but also can talk to so many different people, I think that's cool too, so that I can just kind of talk about life instead of the basic things. There's so many aspects of life. I feel like I'm never going to run out of topics. I thought I had it all figured out like a month ago, and then I got in this real low space, and I'm working on patience right now. I'm working on surrendering right now. So then I write songs about those things, and it kind of helps me pull out of those areas.
I want to ask a little bit about the music industry itself, and there have been a lot of articles and stories I've seen from artists coming out talking about mental wellness among musicians, and I saw, Passion Pit had talked about mental health, and recently Mino Versteeg with Colorado started a label, and they pay $1,500 for every new artist for their mental health that they can use towards mental health. Yep. I'm just curious, with the pressure of the industry to make money, get as much money out of an artist as you can, traveling on the road, do you think the industry's changing, or what was your perspective when you started to write about this from the music side of it, that they're often looking at just profit making?
I think it's actually changing a lot, and changing quick, because I've been going to Canadian Music Week, which is a conference in Toronto every year, and they have whole sections on mental health now, and they have people coming in. My friend actually has a company called Fit on Tour, and it's all about taking care of your mind, body, soul while you're on tour. I have never done a cross-Canada tour, but I know now, because you see people like the documentaries like Avicii, where, people just really didn't have his back and his mental health when he was like, I can't do this anymore, because they were just all about money, 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 and unfortunately he committed suicide. And Justin Bieber, I had tickets to his concert and he canceled it, and I can think, oh, well, that sucks. But he had to take care of himself, and he, thank God, because, people were pushing him right from the get-go. So because I am 29 and I've kind of figured out what my triggers are, what works, what happens when I don't eat good or work out or whatever, I now know that once I go on, a radio tour where you're waking up at 5 a.m., I need to go to bed at 5 p.m. in order to wake up and be able to meditate and get myself in that right headspace. But if you're just signed to a label, young, going, and they want to make money off of you, I'm not interested in that whatsoever. I'd rather take care of myself and be able to do this until I'm 70 than just have, 2 years and then burn out.
There's so many things that, you mentioned just now and with your music that, as a father, I really value for young people, because you see in the media, we don't see a lot of things I think are of there's a lot of value there. There might be, but it just seems like it's just done there for a hit, or it's, everything's so like choreographed or constructed to make money. And I think what you're doing is phenomenal, and you should be commended for being so true to yourself, because it's not easy. You're doing something that, there's a reason why people don't do this, because it's difficult to make money. It's difficult.
Really?
It's a difficult road, right?
Darn.
Hopefully.
All good.
But hopefully it pays off for you, and your career keeps going the way it is, up.
Well, thanks. But to me, it's like I really had to figure out what my values are and why I want something. Like, yeah, I might want that beach house in Malibu, but is it really going to make me happy if I had to do this in order to get there? I'd rather, I live on a farm in Brantford. I'd rather do that and live in nature and be happy in a small little cabin and write songs than, something where I might have had to sacrifice my mental health to get there.
So where can people learn more about you and what you're doing, and where to find you?
You can follow me on Instagram at Alie Walker Music. I am also a model, but I swear I don't post model-y pictures. I love when people reach out to me on Instagram, because it's all about conversation. I've had so many people help me that if I can help somebody else, but I also remind people that I'm not a professional, and these are literally just what I've gone through in my stories, and really, I know nothing.
Well, you brought a lot of value here today.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much for being part of our 100th anniversary celebration. It's been great getting to know you, and we appreciate everything you're doing, and best of luck in the future.
Well, thank you for staying, everybody, too. This is awesome. I'm going to sing a few songs if you want to stick around.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great.